Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm Sergej, with today I have Sergej. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Hello.
I know how to do this. Yes.
I'll be honest, I had to think for like a second to know in which direction to look at. But
the thing is, I know this, right? I know which direction I have to look. That's not... Wait, why did I... Oh, right, yeah, no, that was just me. Right?
Yeah.
I could have said it was on purpose for comedic effect.
Yes, I'll look towards the couch. Like where people normally sit.
Oh, right. That's a good point. I think I have done that before. The other thing for me, I was just like, hey, you see Gene Simmons in the background there? He's very prominent, right?
Yep.
Like that's kind of the thing that you notice. And so I know that Gene Simmons is over there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on that side in the image. So that means on the other side is that's you, right? Like that.
Would make sense, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's what I usually use. But yeah, no, in the beginning I was just like, hey, this is where Alex used to sit. But like, at this point, it's been so long. Like,
The muscle memory is gone.
Yes. Speaking of muscles,
You need
today...
to set up like a puppet or something. Of like Alex, or me, or someone else just sitting there.
My mind went a couple of places there, but I'm not going to say it. I was just thinking, like, what kind of a human-sized doll could we put there? But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
let's not. Yeah.
I'm obviously talking about mannequins. So, our topic today, we're once again trying to put together a movie. This time about superheroes. And once again, we're asking ourselves the question, like, how can we make this not the most generic thing ever? Because, frankly, I don't think we need to pitch the most generic thing ever because it's been done 100 times. And since this is something that is a bit more in my forte than Sergej's, we're going to have Sergej start with how he thinks we can make a more unique superhero story before I come up with some of my own ideas. So we both have a handful of notes that we didn't discuss with each other beforehand. And Sergej.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have that much, but I do have two like superhero concepts, maybe, if you even can call them that. First one being a superhero that can read and type very, very fast. That opens up a website where people can chat with him. I think you see where this is going. I'm just trying to make ChatGPT be a superhero.
I see. That seems like a really cool concept for a 5-minute YouTube skit.
Yes.
Not for like a feature film.
Then I had another idea, recycling some aspects that I've seen already in like anime. A superhero that always guesses correctly, but only if he actually guesses. Like if he thinks up something like calculates something or like remembers something, it is not guaranteed to be correct.
Okay.
And combining that with like the other idea, like the other superhero, like ChatGPT, could be like a super villain or something, trying to spread misinformation to like counter that hero.
It's interesting. You know what I just realized when you started talking?
What?
You were approaching this from an entirely different angle than I was. When I was saying, how could we make something new and unique in superheroes, I was thinking structurally. Mm-hmm. And you were clearly thinking power sets, which are both perfectly valid things and both things that we probably have to consider at some point. So it's not like strong. But my approach was completely about like the story, not about the character. Well, I guess the character does play. Anyways, so those were all of your ideas?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I have 3 things written down, 2 of which are actually concepts and 1 of which is just like an idea. The difference being that an idea doesn't make a movie, a concept does. So The first one is a legacy character living up to the original that doesn't have the same powers. Okay, so legacy character is a term that we use whenever someone adopts the mantle of a pre-existing character, right? So there was a new Iron Man for a while. There's a new Captain America, actually right now in the movies, and there used to be in the comics. Right? So like that concept where like you're not the original character, right? Dick Grayson was Batman for a while, right? So this idea of the superhero more as a mantle rather than a specific person has been getting more traction. And, there are currently 2 Spider-Men. There's a Ms. Marvel, the one that people probably know. It's not the first character to use the name. The character that's now known as Captain Marvel used to be Ms. Marvel. There was also a different Captain Marvel. Okay. Actually, there's another different Captain Marvel as well over at DC, which is actually was created by Fawcett Comics. But anyways, not the point. Sort of the point. The idea here being something like character dies and maybe their sidekick is like trying to take over the role, but they don't have the same powers, so it's going to be difficult to try to like live up to that. In some sense, the concept of like trying to live up to a legacy has definitely been done. Maybe not in a superhero context specifically. I do remember that there was a DC event, I believe it was Convergence. Is it? The one where Earth 2 and the main Earth are like colliding, and it's a couple years in the future and whatever. Shazam takes over as Superman, right? And he doesn't have some of the powers that Superman has, so it's been done a little bit, but I don't think it's been done from like exactly the angle that I'm suggesting here. So that was the first thing I came up with, where it's like, oh yeah, the sidekick tried to take over, and it's not just difficult because living up to the person, but like literally they don't have the powers. Maybe they like try to like fake having some of the powers, something just to like keep the villains thinking that they're facing the same characters. So I think there's an angle there, right? Because a lot of heroes wear masks, and so depending on what kind of mask the character wears, right? If it's like a Spider-Man type character where you don't see anything, right? Like anyone could be under that. And so, it's a bit more difficult if you're Superman, right? Like his face is out there. Like trying to replace him would be difficult. Although the way that they did it in DC was literally because that he started wearing a mask after he wasn't Superman anymore, despite the fact that Shazam and Superman look basically identical depending on who's drawing them anyways, but that's the point. So that was my first idea. My first concept for like how you could structure a story. The second one is actually also around the idea of lacking powers. I came out with that more recently, is a hero loses... That says loses. A hero loses power, their powers, and in the pursuit of trying to like regain their powers, they slowly turn into the villain. Right? Because hero turn villain is in and of itself a played out concept, right? Like, what if the hero was a bad guy? Right? Like the evil Superman thing, right? Homelander, Omni-Man, it's been done. But I kind of like the idea of like if you want to make it as a movie, it could also be a TV show maybe, but I think it works as a movie, right? Like starting out as a hero, maybe not to the part of caricature, but like straight up like a good guy, like straightforward moral code, like not really having to struggle with like moral compromise, and then because of being less powerful, having to like make tough choices. And hey, if I do this thing that's maybe a bit questionable, then I can become more powerful, and then I can save more people, right? And so like the more complexity, and eventually becoming maybe not literally like a muahaha evil villain, but like to the point where they compromise so much morally that they're seen as a villain, even if they themselves still see themselves as the hero of their own story, as it were.
Yeah.
And then the one small concept that I've written down, I've heard before, is how come that heroes are always so on theme, right? Like if you have fire powers, you can almost guarantee that your costume is like some combination of yellow, orange, and red, and probably has like flame patterns on it. Actually, not true for the Human Torch, but he's also literally on fire, so it's not as pertinent. And so it has been proposed, like, what if a character just used iconography on the costume that actually doesn't correlate at all with their powers as like sort of a psychological thing, and I think that could be an interesting villain gimmick. Right? Like a villain who like, I don't know, shows up and it has like, blue clothing, maybe like, a fur coat, like a fur collar, like, looks like Captain Cold, and then starts like shooting fire out of their fingertips, right? Like,
I feel like I've seen that before, but I like just cannot remember where and like if it actually happened.
I don't think I've ever explicitly seen it. I mean, sometimes you have like generic outfits, but I don't think I've ever seen one that like implies one theme and then he does another one. So I do think that could be, if we're doing something that's closer to a traditional hero affair. I mean, even if we aren't, if there are established villains in this, we could have one of the lower tier villains just being someone who when they first encounter the heroes, like, I know what you're doing, and then that's actually not all what they're doing. That's, again, right, this is not a movie concept, right? That's just a cool thing you can put into a movie or into a comic. And also,
yes,
that villain can never be like an A-tier villain, because if they are, everyone knows what they're about, right? So it always has to be like a lower tier villain, like someone who isn't very prominent, which inherently makes it difficult to write as a character, because it's only really effective the first time you see them. So they don't make a good recurring character for like a comic book. Although it would be also hilarious if they just had like different costumes all the time, and it's just the same character underneath.
Yep.
Which, I mean, to a degree is done as well, but like never as a gimmick in and of itself. So I do think there are ideas there that we could explore for like a more antagonist character, I would assume. But yeah, those are sort of more my concepts.
Yes. I have absolutely no idea on concepts. So I will likely just completely rely on you for this, at least for the base outline of one.
Right, because...
And then maybe I can like interject my ideas every now and then.
Yeah, because I didn't want to tell you the whole, like, like, science accident happens, or like, mysterious object appears. Character gets powers. Character decides to protect people. Character faces new villain that just showed up. Defeats the villain. End of movie, right? Like, it's been done. Like, a lot.
Yeah.
So, and then, the obvious ideas are like the subversions, right? Like, what if the hero is secretly a bad guy? Which is basically the story of both The Boys and Invincible, in different ways, but like, and those are just like the two that have gotten current popular adaptations. Like, it's been done. And so I was like, what's a fresh take on superheroes? And I don't know how fresh this is, but I can't think of one that has done exactly what I'm suggesting. Which I suppose brings up the question of A, which of my concepts do we do, or B, do we do both? Because I just realized that legacy character trying to live up to the original, realizing they're not powerful enough, and then in pursuit of power, becoming the bad guy, is also a totally workable concept. Like, both of the concepts are not mutually exclusive.
I mean, I would start with like the second one, just playing out like not being like strong enough, or like losing power and then like having to regain it.
Yeah.
And turning villain during that process. I think that was gonna be easier to like think about.
Probably. That way
we might like later on add like the other concept as well. But for now, like at first.
I do think heroes losing their powers and regaining them is something that happens oftentimes in comics and sometimes in TV shows that's like done. And so I think the fact that it is already a bit of a trope, I think helps us probably with that concept a bit, because normally it's often played like the hero losing their powers is always played as a bad thing, right? Like they lost something, they're not truly themselves anymore. Sometimes like it comes with loss of identity, and obviously because they want to do good, they feel like they can't do that anymore. That's a very common trope. And usually it's just resolved by giving them the powers back. So I think you can probably work with that as as a starting point where it seems like a regular superhero movie, right? Like a regular superhero plot, and then it slowly, surely becomes darker over time. What was I saying? Right. So I do think that works. There was actually, now that I think about it, sort of something like that in the Flash in the TV show, and the new one, not the 90s one. I haven't seen that one. But where he lost his powers, and when he regained his powers, as a side effect, like he lost his morality because of sci-fi shenanigans. But I mean, that's still very different, right? Like this one is about the concept, as I imagined, is more not as an inevitability, but just as like a sort of more like a character piece almost, where you're exploring this
like
character's
a gradual shift,
decline.
Yeah.
Obviously, probably packs more of a punch if it's an already established character that already has had some movies and is all of a sudden like, this is the third movie. Like, we know this character, we know they're a good guy, we know they're very straightforward. Like, they aren't necessarily known for their moral compromises. In the strictest sense, this kind of thing you might want to do with Superman, but obviously evil Superman is a bit overplayed as well. But, right, but like, Superman is almost a caricature in like how much of a good guy he is. To the point where everyone who tackles Superman these days like kind of wants to subvert that, which is stupid. But well, not everyone, but like a lot of adaptations are like, well, you know, Superman is too much a product of his time, and we should make him more realistic and gritty because that's popular. And it's like, yeah, but it's not Superman. Like, you know, the Batman, but you can't do it with Superman. Like, that's just not who he is.
Yeah.
Okay. He loses powers and becomes the villain in pursuit of getting their powers back. I guess the first thing is to establish who our hero was before they lose their powers. So.
Okay, one question though beforehand. Like, how does it usually happen? Like with losing powers? Like, I'm not too familiar with that. Can it be like any kind of powers, and like, how do they regain it back?
I feel like losing powers oftentimes would be something that like a villain does to them, like either on purpose or inadvertently, and then regaining the powers. I think the version that I'm thinking of oftentimes try to like recreate the origin in some sense. Sometimes it's also like trying to use like some of the superhero tech to like effectively replace. I think Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider these days, she, I believe, lost her powers and then got a symbiote, which is a slightly different power set, but the Spider People and the symbiotes almost had similar superpowers. She's basically Venom now.
I am.
You know Venom, the Spider-Man character?
I know Venom, but I don't know about him. Like, I'm not too familiar with that.
He's alien goo, and he binds to a human being. And then also can do sort of shape-shifting kind of stuff, but obviously only around the human body. One of the things being that where Spider-Man has webbing that he like shoots out to like slink through the city, Venom can basically do the same thing, but just make it out of his body. And so having a symbiote and being a spider person gives you similar power sets. And so that was a thing there. Actually, Spider-Gwen did also do a thing where she briefly got like a serum that temporarily gave her her powers back before she got the symbiote, which also is an interesting angle. Where it's like, oh yeah, I think it's actually kind of similar to how they did it on The Flash when he was losing his powers. It was because the Speed Force was burning out, and so the more he used his powers, the quicker it burned out. And the similar thing for Spider-Gwen, where she effectively has a limited number of uses. So that is a thing that has also definitely been done. Flash got his powers back because they recreated the Speed Force. In Flashpoint, he got his powers back because he literally recreated his origin story, right? So in his origin story, he's like in a lab, he gets splashed with chemicals and hit by lightning. And so he basically douses himself in chemicals and puts himself on lightning rod during a thunderstorm, which is obviously a terrible idea, but it worked. I think Spider-Man once got his powers back because of the other, but that's a whole can of worms. The other is like sort of god creature thing. It's a That's also how it got organic
right,
webbing,
yeah.
which I think was synergy with the movie at the time. But normally Spider-Man has web shooters. The only exception being the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, which are arguably the most popular version of the character. Well, actually, the MCU Spider-Man is also pretty popular. But anyways.
Okay, yeah, I have no clue. Yeah, I was like asking because like when you said that, like my first thought was like, okay, like how can a superhero lose their powers and regain them back, especially like, gradually? And my mind like instantly went to like technological superpowers, so like superpowers based on technology.
I mean, yeah, I think there have been stories where like Iron Man loses armor and then he has to build a new one. Like that, those do also happen. I mean, those are in some ways a bit more straightforward, and especially because a lot of those tech-based heroes build their tech themselves. Either that or it's alien. Because you have to have a reason why not everyone has those things. So they're some sort of super genius and no one can replicate their thing. And so...
Yeah.
And obviously the hero keeps the power for themselves because punching criminals is much more effective than, advancing society.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, there are technical arguments you can make, but that's always the problem with like the super billionaires. But I mean, I guess that is also another angle, right? It's just like Batman, but like people actually question why a billionaire would punch people. But that's the point. So the tech-based powers do in some sense work, but probably only if they're from an alien origin, because otherwise, or if the super genius that created them was like a supporting character that has since died or something. Because if you take the armor away from Iron Man, he built the armor in a cave with a box of scrap. So like with actual tech, that's the first version, the more refined one he did build later, but it's like, you can just build it again. Unless you also take away his money, in which case he might not be able to afford it, but like, a story about someone becoming the bad guy because they try to get money is maybe a bit too straightforward.
I mean, we don't necessarily have to use like a big established character.
I mean, I'm not saying we should necessarily use an established character. I'm just like, as analogy, right? Like a lot of the tech-based heroes built the tech themselves. Some of them have like an inventor friend. I mean, Batman doesn't really develop most of his stuff himself. It's usually done by Lucius Fox. But it's always a thing where like, if a human built it, we probably can't tell a particularly compelling story about trying to regain that without it being a bit like contrived. Like, why can't we just do that again, right? Like, I think there was a speedster on the Flash ones who lost their powers and then did a drug that gave them effectively the same powers, but it's also addictive and there's other side effects. And so there are like those sort of things where you can like sort of regain the powers, right? Like with some sort of serum or something. I mean, at that point, it's more of an addiction story. Almost, if it's like, oh yeah, you have a serum that regains you your powers, but you're also addicted to it. So it's just a classic drug addiction story. Putting new spins on those and drugs and superpowers have been done before. It's not entirely impossible, but it is just like a fairly straightforward allegory. I would probably, if I was like coming up with this, I mean, I suppose I am in part, would probably go with like some sort of powers that the character either was born with or got through some sort of like cosmic accident kind of thing. And then after they lose their powers, the ways in which they try to like compensate for that would be through like technology and maybe some experimental drugs or something, and like those, like some combination of like the classic ways in which people get powers outside of and outside of their power set. And maybe if they were like a particularly powerful character, it's like, oh right, like you can maybe get Spider-Man's powers by getting bit by a radioactive spider, but if you're Superman, that still seems like a downgrade, and you still can't save nearly as many people as you used to be able to. Right? And then you also get like your Iron Man armor or whatever, or nanites, and it's like that's still not quite the same thing. And so you can kind of, that's more how I imagine, where like it's like, oh yeah, I still want to be a hero, so I gain like some basic powers that like are like somewhat easily available. And obviously, a superhero would have connections in the superhero community if it's like more like a traditional Marvel or DC universe. There's other characters that have powers, and there's like those super science organizations, and there's probably some way to gain some sort of usefulness as a hero again, even without their like inborn powers. But they're probably going to be weaker. They're probably going to be more limited in some ways. And then it's like more. And that's kind of how I sort of see that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
do
more
like that.
concept than a thought of plot.
That's
So
that's
Sorry.
sort of the direction I was thinking of as well.
I suppose in a way,
Almost I don't know where to go from there.
I suppose the first question asked was like, who is our character, right? And I think making them look like a sort of Superman stand makes sense because you both get the implication of being like a through and through good guy, and simultaneously the whole like the most powerful hero thing. Because if you're the most powerful, that inherently gives us more steps to move up, right? Because if the character is about as strong as Iron Man, except they have powers by nature rather than through armor, and then Iron Man or an Iron Man type character shows up and it's like, you can have one of my armors. They're like, okay, I'm basically back to where I was before, right? So at that point,
yeah,
they don't really have a reason to strive for more power, except for like, oh, it's a bit inconvenient that I don't always have the suit on. Whereas if you start at like a Superman type character, and then someone like Iron Man or Batman comes in and is like, hey, here's some tech to help you out. It's like, yeah, that's not the same thing. Not even close. Right? And so you can then build on that.
That makes sense, yeah.
I guess the sort of ultimate evil move at the end, like that solidifies them as a villain, could be something like trying to steal another character's powers. Which is definitely a thing that you can do in superhero comics. Like, not necessarily like anyone can just go up and be like, "Sup, I have your powers now," but like, there's usually some sort of tech where they can like siphon off the powers. Sometimes characters just have the power to steal powers, right? Like Parasite or Rogue. But other times there's like some tech involved or something. So I think there is somewhat conceivable. That could be sort of the solidifying moment.
I didn't realize that was an option, and I do like it. Now that you've mentioned that.
I mean, you have to also consider, right? Superhero comics have been around since the 30s. If you can think of it, it's probably an option. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I couldn't think of it. At least I didn't think of it.
Yeah, I suppose
So,
it is,
yeah.
again, that I'm just more versed in sort of the tropes of the genre. Although the genre, superhero is a very broad thing, and if you look past just Marvel and DC, there are also more interesting stories that are not just as straightforward as I said, right? Invincible from Image Comics. Actually, I don't know who originally published The Boys, but it doesn't really matter. I've never read that comic, and so I can only speak to the show there anyways. Invincible was really good, though.
Yeah.
Also, actually, fun fact. Invincible, written by Robert Kirkman, who most famously wrote The Walking Dead.
Oh.
Two things that you wouldn't associate with one another, and both of which have gotten very popular adaptations.
Not at all.
But yeah, same guy.
Yeah. That is a fun fact, yeah.
The Walking Dead might be the most well-known non-superhero comic book. Although, I suppose most people don't even know that it is based on a comic book. It's probably more like a fun fact, like, hey, did you know this was based on a comic?
Yeah. I didn't know either.
I mean, there are also oftentimes a lot of like generic fantasy things in superhero universes. So one of the other ways you could gain more powers would be with a more like traditional gothic horror elements, right? You like vampires, werewolves, those sort of thing. I I don't know if our main character becoming a vampire is necessarily a good idea. But it could be an idea in theory.
And now I'm thinking, like, completely disregarding everything we've said so far. Have there been stories of like superheroes in like medieval times?
I sort of definitely. I don't know how. I mean, I know that Black Knight obviously is supposed to be a descendant of the original Black Knight, who was Sir Percival from Arthurian legend. Wait, was it Percival? I think it was Percival. One of the Knights of the Round Table, anyways. So like, you're sort of like, I mean, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, right? So that definitely has been done. I know there was like those are usually more done as like the what if or else worlds kind of stories where it's not really like a main thing. I know you got a reality where there's a Green Lantern who is a knight. So like there are definitely those kind of things. Marvel had not quite what you're asking about 1602. Maybe it's
close enough.
Still barely late Middle Ages. I don't. But you know, I mean the mutants there were known as witch breed, right? Like there was a sort of witch hunt against mutants. I mean, there sort of is in the present day as well, but like not with a witch theme. Actually, ever since Krakoa, they're sort of. I'm getting ahead of myself again. The point being, the idea of like superheroes but make it medieval has definitely been done to some degree. I think superheroes but make it Western is a bit more popular, but like yeah, no, there are definitely those where it's like, oh yeah, superheroes but in a certain time period, it has definitely been done before.
Surprise me if not, yeah. Except that like I haven't seen a single one of those. I
will say I think that has only really been done in the comics. I mean, maybe there's like some animated movies, there's a ton of those, but or like an episode of one of the animated TV shows, but I don't think there's really been like a major live action version of that, especially in movies. I mean, Legends of Tomorrow is a time travel show with superheroes, and one of the places it did go was actually Camelot again, because that's one of those like things that everyone seems to go to. And so there they had I think Sargol was in Camelot, and I think she was supposed to be Merlin. Like, oh hey, Merlin's actually Stargirl. Isn't that a twist? It's like, yeah. So I mean, the Atom was knighted in that story, so it definitely has been done to a point at the very least.
And yeah, I guess like the hard part with like making superheroes, but like in medieval would be like how is it different from like just like fantasy and magic, right?
Yeah, I mean, superhero usually
at least somewhat.
The one thing I always found interesting about superhero universes is that they oftentimes combine elements of fantasy and sci-fi, right? So you'll have in the same universe a character like Doctor Strange, who's just a wizard, and characters like, why am I blanking on any good example? Oh yeah, I mean the original Captain Marvel. How is that my best example? But like you have
Iron Man?
Yeah, I was gonna go with the original Captain Marvel, who's just literally an alien. There's got to be a better example. Hulkling. Hulkling and Wiccan would have been the perfect example. Like, one of them is a wizard and the other one is an alien. Also, they're married. It's just, so, they very much combine sci-fi and fantasy elements. Oftentimes, they don't actually combine them as much as they just both happen to exist. And, like, a magic-based character might fight an alien, but there's actually fairly rarely, although occasionally, like, actually, like, aliens that do magic, which is kind of weird that that's, like, not as common. it does happen occasionally. The Skrulls do sometimes do magic. There was a recent story, Last Annihilation, where there was like a Skrull fire cult. Like, things do exist like that, but it does actually not happen as frequently.
That's surprising.
And so you have like aliens and super science and literal magic, all kind of coexisting in the same universe. And then also you sometimes have characters that are like just regular people that are like putting on an outfit and punching bad guys. Which becomes a bit ridiculous when they start joining teams that have way more powerful characters, right? Like, how the fuck is Batman in the Justice League, right? Like, he makes sense as like a supporting character to like draw plans or design tech or something, but like Superman and Wonder Woman are there, and Martian Manhunter, and like, I mean, even Aquaman and Green Lantern. I mean, The Flash, for fuck's sake, right? Like, everyone in the Justice League is more powerful than Batman. And yet, it just kind of seems to work because it sometimes low-key seems like Batman does have superpowers when he's with the Justice League, even though he canonically doesn't. But when you see like the characters that punch him and he just gets back up, it's like, it sure does seem like he has superpowers.
It's really, really good armor.
Yeah,
Apparently.
except that most of the time he isn't even wearing any like visible armor. It's just like spandex. I mean, yes, obviously, like, it's probably like some like Kevlar nanofiber thing, right? But like, it's only gonna help so much.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes he does literally have some special armor to like make, like, if they're when they went to Apocalypse, he had like the Hellbat armor, right? Like that. Okay. Also, if you have that, then why don't you use that more often? Besides, there are certain things you just have to accept about superhero stories where it's just like, why? It's a whole thing where, like, in any given Batman story, why doesn't Superman just show up and solve the problem in 5 seconds? It's like, because that's not the story we're telling.
Yeah. Because Superman is busy right now.
I mean, that's probably true. But
yeah,
still, I mean,
mm-hmm.
It's like Superman just doesn't go to Gotham unless Batman calls him. It's pretty much true. It's just never officially established because that's kind of a stupid rule to have in a universe.
It is, yeah.
I forgot what we were talking about.
We're trying to figure out like a movie plot or something.
Yeah, no, that part I remember. I've just forgot why I started talking about weirdness in superheroes. Right, magic and sci-fi coexisting, I think.
Yeah.
Was something that I mentioned. And right, so if we were to set it in medieval times, oftentimes the sci-fi elements fall away. And it does more or less become fantasy. The specific difference then would be that you have your characters acting more like individual heroes, I guess, especially in the sword and sorcery fantasy thing that does occasionally happen anyways. And again, oftentimes those are like established characters reskinned as medieval characters, right? So you have a Green Lantern who's also a knight. It's like, but it's still Green Lantern, right? So that's oftentimes also how it's done, where it's like, it's not new heroes in a medieval setting, it's established heroes, but make it medieval. Also, you can obviously have stuff elements in there, but that's just not done as much. But that would also be where like, not necessarily in terms of like the super science, that's maybe a bit more difficult to argue, but in terms of the extraterrestrial elements, where it's like, oh yeah, Superman in medieval times.
Yeah.
I don't know if that specific story has been told.
You could, like, I don't know about sci-fi, but like you could have like sci characters where they just like use more modern technology than what was like available at the time.
They just have like actual like reloadable guns.
Guns?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, depending on when in medieval times you are, guns may or may not be a thing. But yeah. I think I don't know when exactly medieval ended. There's a whole thing when sometimes you don't associate certain types of characters with having guns, but like samurai definitely had guns. Also, samurai were basically around until like very modern times.
Yeah,
What was it? It wouldn't be that weird to see a samurai, a cowboy, and a Victorian gentleman in the same pub. I mean, it would be because they're like not from the same parts of the world, but like time-wise, they're in the exact same time period. At least they overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like,
Which is why you can make a D&D campaign with all three of them.
yes, except that D&D usually is set in like a little bit older, more like medieval times. Actually, samurai would not.
We don't talk about that.
D&D usually doesn't have guns.
Usually, yes.
And there's no reason for it. It's just that people have decided that's not the... Like, D&D is basically just Tolkien, right? Like, that's what usually, like, sort of at its core D&D is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there are no guns in The Lord of the Rings, so there are no guns in D&D. Except when they are.
I mean, there are... Yeah. I mean, there's also no spaceships.
Except for when they are.
Tolkien. Yeah.
Oh, right, it's Tolkien. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, Starjammer is, like, basically spaceships, but with more of a fantasy twist to it.
Mm-hmm.
We were gonna do a superhero movie. I mean, we could just say we talked about some superhero ideas and then call it a day, but it might be a bit disappointing after I set it up.
So do you think this medieval idea thingy has any potential? Or should we just, like, go back to the other one?
I think theoretically it's doable, but you're probably just going to end up telling, like, something about the Knights of the Round Table, basically. Where they're, like, noble knights that are, like, being very heroic, but they also happen to have some magic that they wouldn't otherwise have. But, like, fundamentally, it's probably like any other, like, Arthur and Merlin kind of story. Except that they might not literally be those characters, but, like,
yeah,
it's very likely that kind of story.
Like, I was imagining more like Batman kind of thing, like just like one dude. It's like has way too much time and or money. Just like has like way too modern gadgets for the time period he's in.
It does occur to me that there might actually be a medieval Batman because, there was at one time when Darkseid uses a Mega Sanction on Batman, which normally was supposed to kill him, but because we can't kill off Batman, right? So instead, it actually sent him to the past, sort of, and his consciousness kind of hopped forward in time over time. That's actually, I think, around the time when Dick Grayson was Batman, because, Batman was dead. Well, Bruce Wayne was dead. Well, except that he wasn't actually dead, as I just said. And so there was I know there was a pirate Batman, for sure. I don't know if there was a knight Batman, but there probably was. And so there was, like, Batman in different time periods. And it's just, like, he basically, like, gets reincarnated until he's in the present day again.
I see.
Except that I don't think he dies necessarily, he just kind of jumps forward. But also he doesn't really remember who he is, but he sort of kind of does, because he still acts the same. He's still dressed up as Batman and whatnot. I will fully admit that I haven't read the story, but I've heard of it. I'm not that well versed in DC, but that did come to mind. I'm not sure if there is an Iron Man in 1602. I think it's more of an X-Men story. There mightn't actually be one. Not really the point. I mean, we could just say that Hero loses powers and then slowly regains those powers with increasing dubious means until Hero eventually becomes a villain. Just is our movie plot, and we don't have to flesh it out any further.
Yeah.
I mean, we said some things.
I got.
I'm just like, we've been going for, well, like 3/4 of an hour now, and
oh, goddamn.
And I feel like by the time that we actually have like a beat by beat plot, it's got to be 2 hours, and we have other things we wanted to do today.
Yes. Yes.
I suppose I'll leave this on a to be continued question mark. The answer is probably not, but
Potentially.
I'm just gonna add some question marks to my notes. That'll fix that. Speaking of which, I'll close those notes and I'll go on to my fact of the week. Before that, however, we're going to hear Sergej's fact of the week.
Yes. I was about to question, like, why are we starting with your fact?
No, we're not. I just
Yeah.
almost said I was going to pull up Squirrel, and then I realized if we're doing facts of the week first, and then I said I'm going to pull up my fact of the week, which I do have to do, but obviously you could have.
Yep.
Yeah, anyways.
Yes. So, recently I have heard of the Molyneux problem. It's a French person's name, so sorry if I have butchered that. So the problem is basically if you have a blind person that was blind from birth, and like they can like feel around like different shapes of objects, and then they somehow like regain sight, will they be able to like connect the shape that they can feel with the shape that they can see without actually touching the object? Just like from the visual alone.
You meant to say gain sight, not regain sight, because they never had sight in the first place. It's kind of an important thing. It's people that were born blind.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. When they gain sight. And that was like just a thought experiment, or like a
philosophical question.
Yes, thank you, man. Words are hard. For a long time, until like recently, they actually were able to do that experimentally, like have people gain eyesight for the first time, and apparently no, like people cannot infer the shape of an object to, or like correlate the shape of an object visually and tactile something.
Wait, would it be tactilely or would it be? It's not tactically, but it sounds like it should be tactically when you say tactile.
Tacitly? No.
Nah, that's something completely different.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, they cannot correlate those two. It gets better over time, or like a span of like a month and a half. I from what I've heard. Don't quote me on that though. Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I thought, like okay, like if you hold a star, like you can like know its shape, right? And like when you see a star, you're like, obviously right, but apparently not.
Well, I think the thing you have to consider is if you just know things by touch, your mind doesn't have any reason to like form an actual three-dimensional image of it. Because like, why would you, right? Because that's not how you navigate the world. So I can see why. I'm assuming that actually I don't know if we've ever done experimentation on that, but I'm assuming that they also don't really have like a visual imagination because you don't really have any reference for what visual even is, to a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't imagine the things you're feeling, like how they would look when you have no reference of what to look like even means in any practical sense, then it makes sense that you wouldn't really form that image. And so if you see something, I think I can see why they wouldn't be able to do that. Then again, I can see why people thought they might, right? Like I'm not saying I would have definitely come up with the correct solution if you'd asked me this without knowing what the outcome is. But I can see why that would be the way it is. Again, I could also see why it wouldn't be. So. Because I feel like if you put the star in front of someone and basically go like, hey, like, see the star over there? Like, shape it with your hands. And then they go like, and they're like, oh, I felt something like that before, right? So I could kind of see that, but yeah, again, right, if you're not used to visual at all, I can see why you wouldn't. So, my fact of the week is about a story that I've heard, and that might actually not be true, but there's another alternate story that comes with the same effective result. And long story short, the Russian flag is a rip-off of that's it. I just did a sentence there. The Russian flag is a rip-off of the Dutch flag. There's two subsequent offs. It's a bit... Okay, so Dutch flag, right, has a red stripe, a white stripe, and a blue stripe. And yeah, no, like there was this brief moment where my mind went, is that the correct order? But like, yeah, no, that's the correct order. The point is, the Russian flag has a white stripe, a blue stripe, and a red stripe. It's the same colors in a different order. Now, the story that I had heard was that Peter the Great went to the Netherlands, and he saw the flags that they have in their ships, and he was basically like, okay, I guess we'll just change it a little bit, right? And make it and use it as our flag. Apparently there's a different story where Alexis I had some ships constructed, and when one of the Dutch engineers asked what the flag was going to be, he basically told him, like, you make up something. So the same different result is that it either way is inspired by the Dutch flag, because it's basically just literally rearranging the three stripes in the Dutch flag. In sort of the only one of two ways that you really could, without it just being an upside down Dutch flag, because when it like drapes down, you can't really tell which way the stripes go with the tricolor. So like just turning it upside down wouldn't really make it that different. Yeah. And so the only option you have is to put white either at the top or bottom, which means, and again, right, if we say that the mirrored one is effectively the same, then the only question is the middle stripe going to be blue or red?
And there's like 4 different ways. Like you can mirror and then like switch one of the like edges with the middle. We get like 4 different results. That isn't just like a mirror.
My point is that if you don't want to have the white stripe in the center, if you have the white stripe in the center, it's either going to be the Dutch flag or the Dutch flag upside down. If you don't have white in the center, you're going to have to either have red or blue in the center. And that leaves 2 solutions that create each. Yes, you can have white, blue, red, and red, blue, white, but those are both still, again, mirror images of one another. And so there are actually only 3 options to arrange 3 specific colors in the flag if you consider the upside down version the same flag. Because if something's the top color or bottom color, it doesn't matter. It just matters which the middle color is. There are 6 ways to arrange these colors, half of which are mirror images of the others.
Yes.
Not really the point. But yeah, no, the Russian flag is a ripoff of the Dutch one, and that is my fact. I think
interesting.
I figured I would use that fact when you were on, given, that you obviously have a strong connection to the Dutch flag.
Of course. Yes.
Or something, I don't know. And then we'll move on to our halftime show, which is weekly.
What happened?
Is it this one?
Oh.
No, it's...
No.
So this one, that's the one.
Hey.
Okay, the fact that I clicked mine on accident was actually literally a misclick. There was 2 things that weren't shown on here. Oh, right, the other one is a game capture, which wouldn't work unless the game's playing. So, yeah. I might have once turned off Sergej's camera to show Sergej something that's on my screen that happens to be covered by his camera. and then not turn it back on subsequently, which I probably should have done because I was inevitably going to reuse the zine, and it remembers if I turned off a source. That is your weekly behind the scenes side, except that I don't do behind the scenes. Squirtle! We're doing laser. We're doing laser. And tonic. We found an N. Also, I guess maybe more interestingly, no eyes. There is no I in team, and there's no I in the Squirtle either. Oh, I could have just said there's no I in Squirtle. That would have actually worked, because Squirtle actually does not contain an I in its name. We get a lot of orange hints, which are somewhat useful.
Orange hints.
We got a couple of white hints, which are also fairly useful, although we don't have 2 white hints of the same letter, which makes them less useful.
Second rose looks really interesting.
A, O, C, and N. How do you spell canoe?
I don't know.
Okay, we have 3 letters for the first row, we have 4 for the second, we have 3 letters for the first column, and 3 for the second. I mean, canoe, if it is like just CANOO or OU, would work. Was my point.
I don't think it's a OU.
Could be OO though. It's this is TP all over, TP all over again, right? Like the freaking, the Indian tent, Native American tent, sorry.
Oh yeah.
And like that, we had that before as well. But it's like, oh, it is TP, and it's like, how do you spell that in English? In German, it's literally just TIPI. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
pretty sure as well.
Which means that canoe is probably KANU in German. So canoe. Would be a possibility, maybe. Although, of course, canoe does give us 2 O's then, which is doable, but obviously a lot of O's for a single grid, especially right next to each other. And especially that we have definitely at least 3 O's then in the grid, if canoe were correct.
Yes. I mean, it would also make sense with like the A hint in the first row.
Yes. So we're thinking this might be new, which would make this, let's call it scrap, and
scrap, yeah, that could be a good word.
My first thought, thought they had shortly before they said that it works for the A, was if we put a C there, what does that mean for the first column, right?
Yes.
And so
I was like on like trying to figure out like SCAR and then something.
I was gonna say scat, but it needs an R. Yeah, scars would also work.
Yeah.
Because the problem was that you needed the R, right? And so I was like SC, and then I was immediately like, oh, the R can go after SC, and then it's like, oh yeah, we also we also need an A, and it's like, oh, scra, and it's like, yeah, no, at that point. Scrap.
Could be scram.
It could be scram. I prefer scrap, but it could be. That also puts us in a similar situation. No, it doesn't. We still only have 3 letters for the second column. And for the first row, huh? Until I saw that there obviously can't be an N in the second column, I was almost going to say it's also canoe. Because we also need a C there. And an O.
Row.
I got nothing right offhand. First row, as we said, needs an S, E, and T, which spells out set. I mean, it literally could be an E there. Although that would make it more difficult to put the C and the O in there as well. Earrock. Earco. I mean, it would make sense to put the C there, right? Just like C just goes fairly well after S and does go fairly well before A.
Mm-hmm.
Scent. Ooh, I like that. There's nothing speaking against that. I mean, at this point, I'm just making up words that could theoretically be in there. But I suppose that's better than nothing, because we can then use that in our guess later.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's wrong, then we can just remove the letters. Remove the letters again. Actually, I guess AO would be totally possible. Could be like aorta, which I'm pretty sure we've had before.
Yes, we did.
Wait, did we?
Yeah.
Are you sure we didn't just wrongly guess it? Because now that I think about it, I think aorta might be spelled with an H. In which case it would be 6 letters.
Man, I don't remember. I know we encountered it multiple times, but I don't remember if those multiple times it was correct or if it was incorrect.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Cargo! Oh no. No, it's not cargo. None of this one's crap.
Yeah, let's not do that. So you would need like a vowel there.
Yeah, I was just thinking CAO seemed a bit odd to me. Yeah, you need a vowel there.
Wait. Actually, are there consonants that could go after an R?
Not there. I mean,
Like maybe an H? Somehow?
maybe, but it seems like a stretch. Like H's I put after, I mean, obviously C and S, but also like G and T. But because I was just thinking, a consonant to go. Wait, Yeah, no, a vowel to go after A is rough. It can't be I, which is the one that I normally would like to put there. Which I guess leaves us with U.
Yeah.
Which... Coro, coro, cato, causo, capo, causo, cado, cafo, cargo, caho, caco, colo, coyo, coxo, caco, cavo, cabo, cano, como. Yeah, it's gonna be no for me.
Sounds a bit unlikely, yeah.
Thing is, KO
And there's
as a
like
starter,
no
it's like,
real AA kind of stuff going on in English, right?
probably somewhere, but it would be very obscure, probably. And putting the O there immediately reminds me of chaos, but it's like it's a C, not a CH.
Mm-hmm.
Um. mm, Okay, wild idea. How about we just guess a word that starts with EN and has an O in one of these two spots, both to help us define if the canoe is correct from the row, and to see where in this column we would want the O from the column.
Sure.
First one I can remember is enroll, but I think that has two L's. So, ento.
Honestly, we don't even need it to be starting with the EN.
True.
Like, we can use a different letter than N, and I would argue we should.
Very fair point. In which case we technically could also put the O there, but like I don't want to put it in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I do want to prefer to put it in left, so because then it also helps with this. That's actually why I wanted it there in the first place. So let's not put an O there. Put O as one of the last two. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say ergo, but that ERGO, that's too short. Echoes. I mean, we've already tested C in this row and that column, but it could possibly give us a position. Not that it's where we suspect it to be, because we suspect it to be in first, but it could be in second, especially. Wait, especially. Well, it could be here. So, that could be interesting information. Wait, yeah, no, I would pointing at there. ECHOS. I mean, the S at the end isn't the greatest thing ever. But also, again, right, like this column does need an S, so we would have some extra hint for that as well. And we know that this column needs an S, and this row, so it's not. But I mean, we could also just hit it. Wait, echoes is spelled with an E, isn't it? Fuck. I think I just said all of that, and then it turns out. Well, I think it's much like Heroes, right? Where it's like ECHOES, I think, not just echoes with it. So it wouldn't actually fit. So my whole point about like how it would maybe make sense to have the C and the S in there are irrelevant. Problem is there aren't a lot of words that start with E and have an O towards the end that I can think of right offhand.
Surprisingly hard.
Yes. Whenever I do have a word that has an O, it's usually like in the middle, which is not where I want it. And even there, it's usually like a stretch.
Most of the words I can come up with are like 4 letters.
Yeah, that too. I mean, as I said, echo, right? Echo works, echoes doesn't technically work. Like, echo is too short and echoes is too long. It's like, what happened there? Egos. You know how people say doggos when they mean dogs? Egos when you mean eggs.
At that point, like ergos.
Ergos. I mean, is it a word?
I don't know. I don't know.
Seems like it should be, but
doesn't hurt to try, I guess. It's a word.
I mean, we didn't quite get the O hints that I wanted. Due to the fact that we just got an O. That being said, that does make a good case for the O being there after. It also makes a good argument for maybe Canoe being wrong. Because then we'd have we have double O here as well. I mean, maybe Center's wrong. That could also maybe work. Nu seems like a stretch. Also, this R seems like a stretch now.
Yuki? Yeah.
So this R is probably wrong, which means that we have no basis for this A and the P. Also, this N I don't particularly like there anymore. Which means we don't really have a reason for placing the other letters the way I did. And I don't love this O there either. And very quickly there's nothing left, right? I guess the O could even be in the first spot, right?
Yes.
I mean, granted, you would have to somehow make that work. Because, like, what comes after... I mean, I suppose, technically, the way the hints are looking, it would make more sense if the A was there, right? But we had that there before, yes, I know. Which... O-A-N. Own... seems unlikely. Which makes you think the O goes there. Is that a thing? Like, if there was an E at the end, obviously, right? But with an O? Wanko, Ranko, Tanko, Zanko, Panko, Zanko, Danko, Fanko, Hanko, Janko, Kanko, Lanko, Sanko, Kanko, Vanko, Banko, Nanko, Manko. Mango, sure. Right? Tango, sure. But with a C? Questionable. Which brings up the question, what are our other options, right? Do we go...
Canoe!
Oh, wait, is Canoe's probably an E, maybe. But I mean, it would be O-E, not E-O. But, that might actually be how it's spelled, which would suggest it's being pronounced Canoe, but English language inconsistency, right? I mean, that still doesn't help the fact that I didn't love the double O there, but I mean, we could have it. It could just be right? That's the other problem. Can no? Nah, that's not how it works. Can neo? No. Canro, Canto, Canzo, Canwo, no, Campo, Canao, Canzo, Canfo, Canho, Canjo, Canco, Canlo, Canio, Canxo, Canco, Canvo, Canbo, Cano, Canmo. I think we're back to an O being there. Then the question is, right, is it Canao, Cano, Canor, Canot, Canoz, Canao, Canop, Canoa, Canos, Canos, Canod, Canoff, Cano, Canoe, Canuck, Canol, Canoy, Canox, Canock, Canov, Canob, Canon, Canom. And we're back to it being. That looks more right to me.
Canon.
Canon. I don't think it's double OE. And it's not going to be E double O either. So it would have to be this, right?
Yeah. It's basically guaranteed.
Just make a good argument for E there or there, but that's neither here nor there. I'm almost tempted to do the things that just don't have an E at the end, right? Like tool, pool, right? But like those just don't have an E at the end. Cool. Funky hell.
Boogie.
Bouge. I mean, boogie, I think, would be like maybe double G and IE or something. Boogie as in music would be with a Y at the end, I believe. Like EY at the end.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. That could be.
I thought you meant as in like a booger. Anyways, either one. Either way, it doesn't work.
Oh.
Woog. Wool.
Woolly. Also not quite.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think I'm leaning towards L or G in between the U and the E. Oh no, we can have G's. Or S, actually. Loose. Wait, loose still doesn't have a...
Oh.
No, loose. Yeah, no, that would work.
Yeah.
I mean, except that it's not loud, but...
Moose.
Moose. Is that how I spell moose? I think so, right?
I think so, yeah.
Also, counterpoint. Oh, no, wait, never mind. How do you spell noose?
I think that works as well.
I mean, we already have a bunch of N's, so if we want to try something, we probably might as well try moose. But... Oh, actually, speaking of N's... E double
booze
N...
with a different kind of Z.
I mean, it's a really fun guess. Actually, interesting point. First roasting is an S and a T. Which means that whatever we do put there, unless it is an S or a T in and of itself, would also have to somehow fit here, right? So the S can't be at the end. If it's not there, it has to be in one of the first two. I'm leaning towards the very first.
Yes.
Which will put the T at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Which puts Noose in the picture again and makes this, believe it or not, sent. I engineered this in a completely different way this time. The fact that I got there in two different ways, I think,
it must be right.
Makes me more certain that it's right, even if it isn't necessarily.
Yep.
Carol. 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 Carrot.
Carol.
Carol. Like it's a Christmas carol.
Yeah.
And we do
need an
L
that
somewhere.
Half an hour ago.
Okay. Third row is interesting because it needs an S and an N. And we already have this R and the O there. It looks with the intersection of hints like the S would... Wait, the S needs to be there.
I mean, it must be there, yeah.
Anything about N's? No. Well, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
So it's arson.
Gotta be there. True, yeah.
Oh, wait, no E's in that row. Wouldn't that have been so convenient, though? Why? Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean... Scart? I learned a lot. It doesn't matter.
No T's.
Scars? Scars! With an S. Which I believe I had also at one point suggested.
No, could not be. No S in that position.
Oh, no S, never mind. Okay. Scars. Scarp? Scarf.
Oh, scarf.
Like, it's not just a noose you can tie around your neck, it could also be a scarf. It is probably fleet, isn't it? I mean, that's not the letter I wanted to put in that position. The thing is, I was gonna, when it said scars, before he corrected me, I was about to say it could be sleet. Right, so...
Okay. I was thinking like maybe scarb is a thing, and was thinking bleed.
Also,
so,
it
quite
occurs
similar
to me that something about this T and N configuration can't be quite right. Now, I'm actually much more confident in arson than I am in cannon, and scent was a good call unless there is something that I miss. Oh no, I put the T there on purpose because it can't be there. It can't be there. It could be there in theory, but not if noose is correct. We have to be like toos, tour, toot, toos, toop, tood, toof, took, tool, toos, took, toov, tav, toov, toob, toon, toon, toom. I like scent. What was it about the C? The C needed to be there, but it can't be in noose or carol.
So it's maybe still canoe.
Which I think I said we might want to spell with an E. That sounded more natural to me. Which makes this one Tenet. You know, like the movie. And this one is what the fuck? Um,
Ensue and rouse.
I'm stupid. That should have been very obvious, actually. I guess it's just one letter. Okay,
Yeah.
I guess that means I'm gonna type in rouse
Took me a
now.
second. Yep.
Unless, wait. No, I think it doesn't matter, right? I was right about how canoe is spelled. Okay, this one, I feel like we struggled with it more than we probably should have.
Yeah.
Scent, canoe, arson, rouse, fleet, scarf, carol, ensue, noose, tenet. Those are all words that we know. Admittedly, I forgot what tenet means again because we did look it up once because we did once use it before. But it's tent. Yeah, great. I might have misspelled it and accidentally asked it to find tent, which is like, to be fair, not a stupid thing to ask because I definitely remember Alex and I
Yes.
looking up to find table and to find desk because we were arguing about what makes a table a desk.
Mm-hmm.
A doctrine, principle,
Also,
or
if
position.
you,
It's just tenant, right?
I think so, maybe.
Tenant. Is tenant actually spelled that way? Tenant. Tenant and tenant. What's the difference? Tenant usually refers to someone who owns a home or apartment from a landlord. Oh, so the thing that I thought was tenant is just tenant. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Might well be true. I always thought it was tenant. You know, like the things you adhere to. Ideals.
Yeah, no. Without the second N.
Huh. Finally out of words I knew, but not correctly. Which I'm pretty sure is probably an observation I made last time we had this. Yes, I know tenant is someone who rents. Okay. Mm-hmm. That brings us to open-ended questions. We're not going to go very long on these because the show has gone on for a while, but we're going to do like at least 2 of those, probably at least 3. What's the funniest criminal misadventure story you've heard? The superlatives. I'm pretty sure I've seen actual like surveillance footage of thieves breaking into a store through the ceiling and then not figuring out how to get out anymore. If you break through the ceiling without any like rope or anything to get up on,
yes,
and you don't actually have a way to open the door,
yep.
It's definitely not the funniest, but it's the funniest I can think of.
Like I'm thinking like back, like I immediately think back to like all the physical penetration testing stories I've heard of.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is,
not a crime.
Those aren't criminal. Yeah.
Those would have been
those
criminal
are specifically
if they weren't
not
explicitly
a crime.
authorized. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember a story that one pen tester was telling where he's like, "Oh yeah, I pretended to be an elevator repair technician." Like, great story. The problem is, right, like even the ones that I do remember, first of all, I probably mostly are from like 1 or 2 talks I've heard about that, and second of all, I'm never going to be able to retell them quite as effectively. But my favorite trick that I learned from that is that a lot of the sensors for doors, like door sensors, are based on heat, but apparently they only detect changes in temperature, not necessarily that it's warmer.
Spray can.
And if you take a can of compressed air, turn it upside down, it actually is quite cold what comes out because of how the gas that makes it go up. So you just spray it. If there's like a bit of a space between the doors, which there often is, you just spray it over the sensor and the door just opens.
Yes. Don't try that in real life because, like, usually there's like cameras pointing at like doors that have that.
I mean,
but yeah, it's likely to work.
It's one of those things where only don't do that in real life if there's a reason not to do it. Right? Like, it's like there are probably situations in which you would technically be fine to do that, but like only if you're already allowed in there, right? Like, it's that if you're actually like breaking and entering, even if you're not literally breaking anything, then obviously that's a problem. If you're trespassing, right, like that sort of a thing. But if it's a thing where like, the door's already closed and you have to go the long way around, and so you're like, fuck this, then yeah, maybe.
Yep. Then yes, go all for it. Show it off to your coworkers.
But yeah, no, there's some. Oh yeah, also just like literally just like doors locked from the outside, but you can go through from the inside, and you have the key, but you just want to show off. Is probably fine.
Yeah.
Funny crimes. I think there was a story about thieves who left a note or something, but I forgot about the details there. It's like, like they were drunk or something. It's whatever. I think there was one story where when they were drunk, they broke into a store, like took some of the product and then actually left, pay for the product. But obviously they still got in trouble because they still broke something. I mean, but this would have been illegal either way, even if they didn't break anything. But like, they could have probably gotten away with it because whatever. But
yeah,
no, they did quite some damage. But funniest criminal misadventures. That's probably the best I can come up with on the spot.
Yeah, same.
Well, if you had $200,000, I'm assuming that's supposed to be US dollars, I mean, it could be pesos, to spend on a party,
likely.
How would you spend the money? By the way, Mexican pesos do actually use the dollar symbol for their currency symbol, which is not at all confusing ever.
Oh. So how much would that be in US dollars if it
quite a bit
were
less.
pesos? I mean, yeah, I figured, but like...
No. Let's see. 200 pesos in USD. 11 and a half.
It's a lot of money. Yeah.
Could also be Canadian dollars. I think they also use a dollar symbol, but like, if it's Canadian dollars, it's like 170,000 or something. I estimate, but
I don't know. Like, either fly to where my friends live or fly them in. Get a lot of pizza, couple drinks.
See, I was thinking very cheeky there. I was like, decorations made of solid gold, right? Because it's like, and then I throw a fairly cheap party, but like, there's a very expensive gold decorations that after the fact you just sell again.
Yes.
Because when I get asked this question, and obviously that's not the approach you're supposed to take, but my first thing is like, how do I keep as much of the money as possible? Because spending $200,000 on a party is very wasteful.
It is.
Like, I'll buy a house to throw a party
similar.
Because depending on where you are, $200K for a house is still possible. If you're like in a more rural area and it's a small house, you could probably that you could probably do that.
Yes.
And so it's just a moving in party. We're throwing a moving in party. The costs are for moving it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't really answer this seriously because why would I spend $200,000 on a? I'm not much of a party person, right? Because when I throw parties, it's usually like 5 to 10 people at most that are coming, right? So,
yep,
that's
similar.
So even if we go more towards the top end, that's still like over $10,000 per person. And I already went over the top end by saying more than 10,000 rather than just saying 20,000. And of course, you don't spend money on like a per person basis for everything, right? Certain things are just like total costs, but like, damn, try spending that much money on a single party. Like, if I can't keep anything from that party, right? Like, because otherwise you'd be like, oh yeah, I'll like buy some expensive booze that we'll only like half drink, right? I'll buy some games that we can play that we can then also keep playing after. So like, I'm always thinking about like keeping some of it, but if it's all gone,
the long term,
yeah, because if it's all gone, then like, try spending $200K in a night, right? Like, live music. I mean, I can get that cheaper, but like, I'm assuming I can get that cheaper. Like, why? Like, you can just get a cover band, right? The problem is, it would be hard to even think of an artist that you could just hire, like, at all for the first part, right? Like, that I would actually want to listen to. Second of all, for that amount of money, right? Because I feel like most of the musicians that I actually like would be too big, probably, to throw, like, a party for someone for that money, right? So it's like, and if I think about bands that I know I can hire, they're probably not that expensive. I know there are some like local cover bands that you can actually hire out for parties. I never did look into pricing, and I think it's one of those where it's like, oh yeah, contact us and then we'll give you a price. Which usually means things are expensive, but they can't be that expensive. I mean, I've seen them I've seen those kinds of parties at events that definitely didn't have that kind of a budget, right? So, live music is the only thing I can think of that you could probably spend a good amount of money on that would just be gone after the fact. I mean, that, and I guess like
you could also spend a lot on location.
Ooh, location, yeah. I mean, yeah, if it's, right, you said flying people in, right? If it's like a trip, like we go somewhere and party there, that could be.
Yeah.
Like we rent a castle or some shit.
Wouldn't that be fun? Would less be a party, but more like, I don't know, maybe an adventure or something, like exploring a castle?
I mean, if it's on Airbnb, it's probably not very adventurous to explore it, but
I think for 200K we can like actually rent maybe a more real castle on Airbnb.
And then we also hire a film crew while we're at it.
Oh, yes.
And now we're just a ghost hunting show. Also, I guess there's a party at some point, but
yeah.
And then instead of keeping anything from the party itself, we're then selling the recording. Okay, no, I'm doing the thing again. I think I would have a hard time spending $200,000 on anything. I mean, except like a house or something, but like that kind of money to just like be like, oh, you have that kind of money. It's like, I'm not going to spend it. I might spend some of it. I would
spend it, but like not on like a party.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't spend all of it, right? Like, unless I'm like a house, I wouldn't spend all of it at once. Like over time, sure, eventually you would spend it, but yeah, no. Yeah, I guess the whole like making it a trip or like a location thing is probably like the best idea. I do think
I know what I could do. I would buy a camera. A singular one.
Yeah. But again, right, like
all that money.
If we're not being
Mm-hmm.
if we're not being tricky with it, then yeah, it's either gonna be location or experience, right? That's gotta be. Ooh, actually, you could also spend 200,000 on catering, and invite like the entire homeless population of a city. I'm still not keeping anything, but at least I'm doing something
Would
good.
be man, that would be a hell of a party.
Yeah. Right, because I was thinking like, I was just thinking like, just because I can't keep anything doesn't mean I still can't do anything good just by throwing the party itself. But like, that's about as far as I can stretch this without like straight up going into the like just having the leftovers from the party being in and of itself the real value.
Mm-hmm.
Just an excuse to feed people. That's some of the most creative I can get with that. But like, again, right, like 20,000 at a party. That's like, unless you're actually rich, it's kind of ridiculous. And even if you are rich, it's still ridiculous. But at least you can afford it.
Yeah.
I don't get rich people because okay, I know a lot of people say this, and it's hard to prove whether or not it's actually true. But I feel like I could never spend money like a rich person, even if I had that kind of money. Like I would, if I was like the price doesn't matter kind of rich, then I would definitely spend more money than I do. Right? I'm never going to pretend like I would just live this exact lifestyle, but like a yacht? Why would I buy a yacht? Right? Like, I mean, okay, I guess I can sort of maybe see the theoretical appeal there, right? But like, I don't know, it seems wasteful. And I wouldn't want to be wasteful, right? Like, sure, I might buy a fancy house if I was rich, right? I would, like that I could see, like, not like fancy, like, not like super fancy, like one of those like Hollywood manors or something, but like, you know, maybe a little bigger than I would need, right? Maybe with a bit more land around it than I would need. But like, even that, it's like, that's still a useful thing, right? I could see like eating in restaurants more, right? Like those sort of like, they are still in a sense wasteful, but like when they throw these huge parties that cost like millions of dollars, when they buy like mega yachts and shit like that, like I don't even think I would want a private jet, even though like I can kind of see the appeal, but like where do I go? Right? Like why would I?
Yeah.
It's
like just generally being an indoorsy person just like
yes.
doesn't mix with those kind of things.
I mean, it's a thing where I'll probably end up having like shelves full of like books and DVDs and shit that I probably didn't need to buy. But like, that is again where the individual items will be in the double-digit price. And if you have an entire shelf full of them, you're still not going to end up spending millions.
Yeah.
I'll buy the entire Big Finish catalog, right? I don't know. That seems like fun. Big Finish is a company that produces audio dramas, most notably about Doctor Who.
Oh.
And it has been said that you could spend a lot of money by buying all of their stuff because they have like hundreds of their audio dramas, and I think each one of them will cost you. I'm assuming the boxes are more expensive. I think the individual stories are like in the single digits, but still, right? If it's hundreds of them, you know what? Let's see.
A lot of money.
Big Finish. I mean, they have a website. They have a store. BigFinish.com. Audiobooks. Yes, thank you. The Doctor Who something. It's just Doctor Who: The 10th Doctor Adventures, right? Okay, those vary quite a bit, but yeah, it seems like they go from like more like $10 to $30. Hey, this one's free. Oh, excerpt. Okay, great. Why is this in your store? Yeah, it seems like most of those are from 10 to 30. Also, it seems like all of them are reduced right now, which might be like a... I was gonna say like a Cyber Monday thing, but like that's been over for a couple days now. I don't know.
I mean, you know how like companies and stores make it like a Black Friday week, Cyber Monday week nowadays, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Might be that going on here.
Also, I don't see any obvious way right now to like buy more of them at once, except for like adding them all individually to the cart, which, you know, fair, I suppose, but like, what if I want to buy everything? Or like everything in a certain series, right? Like it's actually wait, Doctor Who, do you have the main range as a separate Early Adventures Lost Stories monthly adventures? I think that might be it. Okay, yeah, those are about $15 each, and those are not reduced either. Some of them are free. Oh no, this is one of the stories in a multi-story set, I think. Doesn't matter. Point being, like, I can think of some ways to spend quite a lot of money from like a reasonable person budget standpoint, but not spend like millionaire kinds of money, like in general.
Yeah.
Anything else you have to say about the impromptu topic that I just came up with about money spending, or this more specific question that we were actually asked?
Not really, no.
So I'll just quickly mention the next question would be, how will phones change in the future? And I will just say, we've made an entire episode about that. I will never remember to put an info card, but in theory, if I were to remember to put one, it will be there. And I think that is enough to get us to this.
Please comment if JJ doesn't remember. To remind him.
Fair enough. And I think that probably brings us to the songs of the week, which I probably shouldn't have introed while I'm still editing our document for notes for next time. Brings us to the songs of the week. So yeah, what is your song of the week?
My song of the week is Sealed Vessel by Christopher Larkin.
I mean, it sounds very epic. I'm sure it is very effective as a video game soundtrack, or this could also be the kind of thing that we could listen to while playing D&D, for example. But this isn't the kind of thing I would just, like, listen to while I'm doing whatever. I'm weird, okay? Because I know a lot of people like having instrumental music as background music, and that's just not it for me. Like, if I'm reading something, well, okay, if I'm actually, like, reading a book, not necessarily, but like if I'm like reading articles online or something, or like I'm scrolling through Reddit or whatever, I will have music on in the background, and it will just be regular, like rock and pop music, just generally older, maybe metal, right? But like in general, it'll just be like regular ass music. It just won't be this sort of stuff.
That's fair. I also tend to not really care if the music I'm listening to while doing stuff has lyrics or not, like what kind of music it is, in general. But that also includes this kind of stuff. Like I can listen to that as well.
Yeah,
and I do sometimes.
For me, it's usually that I prefer to listen to songs that I like, so it'll just be songs that I already like. Also, this is the main time when I do listen to music is while I'm doing something else and just sit down and listen to music. I know some people do that, but that's just not me. And so I do sometimes, like, if I am listening to music while doing something else, I might actually, like, get into the music, like, which is the whole reason why people tend to use instrumental music, because, it's not as distracting. But usually I'm not doing something that requires a high degree of concentration anyways. If I was prioritizing on concentration, I would just not have music.
For me, music sometimes can help concentrating.
Yeah, I can see that, but like maybe if I was doing something that would like require sustained concentration for like long periods of time, maybe I could see the argument there. But I don't think I really do a lot of that sort of stuff. And when I do, even when I do occasionally do it, it's usually still without music. Or I mean, it depends on like how concentrated. I might also like intermittently have music on, but like
yeah.
Also,
like one thing I want to mention about this one in particular, it's not just like one of these constantly repeating kind of background music kind of things. It's like pretty. I don't know. I don't have the words to describe it. Like, I don't know what. But basically, it's like a full piece, like beginning, middle, end, and like different parts, lots of variation. So like, do give it a listen. It's kind of hard to choose a 20-second segment of like an almost 6-minute piece.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, to some degree, you would think that it's especially true for something more classical like this, right? Where, and I don't know if it's not literally classical music, but like in a classical style more so. Because if you have like a pop song, like oftentimes there was a long period where like actually a lot of pop songs that I fondly remember are actually kind of shit, and it's just the chorus that is good.
Yeah,
and also the chorus repeats a bunch anyway.
Exactly.
So like, but yeah, no. Anything else you want to say about this?
Well, since it's Hollow Knight, like, I do recommend you play Hollow Knight. I think you will enjoy that.
I'm not sure if that's true, but maybe. Well, my song of the week is While Your Lips Are Still Red by Nightwish.
Yes, while your lips are still red, while he's still silent red, while bosom is still untouched, I'll wait, hold another hand, while the hand's still without a toe.
Not necessarily my cup of tea.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have much to say about it. I like it. I think this is the second Nightwish song I had in a fairly short period of time. Maybe? It might... I definitely remember talking about Nightwish with Smokey, but I don't remember why that came up. It's not really the point anyways. Yeah, I like the song. It's not really like a typical Nightwish song in a lot of ways, but I still like it anyways. And that's probably all I have to say about this. Which brings this episode of the Trash Talk Podcast to a close. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. If you want to see more episodes like this, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you guys want to say, leave a comment or join the Discord server. Link is in the description below. Sergej.
That's it.
That's it.